Okay, we gotta get under here because something big is about to happen.
Maybe.
Possibly. So let's talk about what we're doing here. So this is staying. We're not removing this or any of that. It's this that's coming out, right?
Yeah, this whole black thing right here. And silver, I guess.
Black and silver. Silver makes it go faster, and the black so makes it look cool.
Sure. Either that or when Richard was rebuilding it, he wouldn't not paint stuff.
Well, I'm good with Richard on that. Oh, these air shocks? Oh, I didn't know these were air shocks.
It's actually, when the second owner bought this car, he came into the auto parts store where I worked, and I sold him some things like the dash pad, the dash mat.
Man, there's so much history on this car. Maybe this is a good time to talk about it, or should we do it when we're driving? There's a whole crazy history of interconnectedness in different states. And this guy right here, the original owner, the second owner, I mean, it's nuts.
Well, this car was originally purchased by an old man in Missoula, Montana in 1970 as a retirement gift for himself.
Okay, so he retired. He's like, you know what? I've been working hard. I'm buying a car.
I'm buying the car I want. And
but there was something specific about the car. Why this car?
Well, it's a smallish car. At the time, it was considered a compact. And it's a performance car. It's got a 344 barrel in it, so it had 275 horsepower rated. Mm-hmm. And so it was a good car. And I actually met him when I was 18 years old, and he was in his late 80s.
Late 80s, okay.
I ran into him in a parking lot because I saw the car and I really liked it. And my friend and I were trying to figure out how to leave him a note to tell him how much I liked his car and was hoping to buy it someday.
So you were really going to leave him a note, and you really liked that? Okay, all right.
So he walked up while we were trying to leave a note and said, hey, you guys like my car? And we talked to him for a while. And it was funny because we were only 18, and he seemed like a really old man. And it turns out, once I learned more about it, he was an old man. He was in his late 80s. He was like 88 or 89 at the time.
And how old was it? How long did he have the car at that point?
At that point, he had owned the car for about 18-ish years at that time.
Okay, cool.
And so it was just funny because we were, young kids, and, you don't expect an old person to go, yeah, and it can really move when you give it the gas. And so that was just funny. And so he took my name and number and said he'd call me if he ever decided to sell. And I never heard from him again. And about 4 years later, a car pulled up in front of the auto parts store where I was working at the time. And I thought it was maybe him or something, but I recognized it as this car. And I went running outside to see if it was the old man, and it wasn't. It was the kid that lived next door to me when I grew up.
Another connection.
And I was like, dude, what do you do with this car? That guy said he was going to sell it to me. And he's like, oh, you were never going to get to buy this car. He's like, I lived next door to him for a number of years, and I used to paint their house and shovel their driveway and mow their lawn and stuff. He's like, you were never going to get to buy this car. I got to buy this car. So unfortunately, the old man had passed away, and his wife sold the car to Rick, my next door neighbor. And so Rick tore into the car, not tore into the car, but, pulled the seats out and cleaned underneath the seats and tightened all the nuts and bolts and made everything, really nice, as far as a good driver car goes.
Didn't change anything. He's just like...
No, just cleaned everything up and made sure everything was, up to snuff. And then I hadn't seen the car since around that time. And so a couple years ago, a friend of mine, sent me a picture of a car. It was a 340 Duster. And I was like, oh, is that for sale? He's like... He thought he was going to buy it. I said, well, let me know if you don't buy it. I'd like to buy it. Not realizing that it was this car. Again, it was, I was seeing little tiny pictures on my phone. And so he decided he wasn't going to buy it. So he gave me the name of the guy who had bought it from Rick, my old next door neighbor, who ended up selling it to me. So I've owned it for 2 years.
That is crazy. And it's the car that you always had wanted to buy.
Yeah, I tried to buy it, 30 plus years ago.
That's pretty awesome. That's a pretty neat story to have gotten a hold of the car that was from way back then. I mean, pretty unusual story.
So I made very few modifications to the car. I, changed out this third member here to give it a, better accelerating rear end,
Low
axle ratio.
Yeah.
and put different springs on it because the original springs were a little saggy.
These
And
are
that's
very
it.
shiny. And that's it.
And now we're putting the stock rear back into it.
And this will make it pretty much 100% stock, right? I mean,
Well, I'm not changing the springs back.
well, I
Yet.
mean, those are wear parts, right? But I mean, except for a wear part that might have had to been changed, it's stock.
But I do still have the original springs in case somebody in the future wants to put them back on. You can actually take them and have them re-arched. You can have, a spring place go through them and, put the correct amount of spring back in them like they're new.
That
But
makes sense. I did that on my Mazda, but that was to over bend it.
these were cheaper to buy new and put on than
Yeah.
re-arching the originals. So that's why I decided to do
Makes
that.
sense. Pretty cool, man. I mean, given the age of this car, it looks pretty nice under here, really. I mean,
It looks like it was heavily undercoated probably when it was new.
yeah, that's true. So maybe the undercoating isn't a ripoff.
It depends on where you live and how it's put on. These cars had a tendency to rust really easily in the trunk area, which is back there behind the gas tank, when that one is not rusted at all.
No, that looks good.
Or in the quarter panel areas, right in that area there. And there's a minor amount of rust.
Pretty
but-
low, though.
but pretty
for it to
low.
be honest.
Unfortunately, that connects to the trunk, and there's like a gap between that side of the quarter panel and the trunk, where junk can fall down in there.
Jump
and then water
in the
can,
trunk.
Exactly, and then water can get on that, and then so it holds it against the steel and eventually starts to rust, and that's why almost all of these cars have rust there. And then, of course, if the car spent time in the Midwest or the Rust Belt,
Yeah.
they rust everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely everywhere.
Yep.
This one
Sweet.
has very little rust.
And now is the time where we are going to drop this sucker down so you can change that back.
Maybe.
Have you decided how you're going to do it?
I'm gonna. Oh, I should have jacked this up a little higher.
I have one hand. I'm the cameraman, but
Oh,
I don't know what that was.
that was a tag that needed to come off, so that's okay. So,
It's very heavy. We got
that
it.
is what I was trying to do, and that went smoothly.
Sweet. Probably my extra hand.
It probably helped.
It probably didn't help much. It might have helped a teeny tiny amount, but
But we still
all
have
right,
some
cool.
gear oil coming out.
What does that look like? I can't even see, but
It's
perhaps
right here.
the camera can. Oh, I see that. Yeah. All right.
Oh, what does this look like inside?
Yeah.
Metal.
Metally goodness. Look at all that.
It looks like this, but opposite and smoother.
I think I got the camera over there too. All right, cool. Well, we'll get back to some other work, and then we'll come back in for some Zoom stuff. What is next? So why don't you tell us what are we doing next here? Got to get the other one, the original, and put it back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to decide whether, I got to get the gasket out of here and then get this all slid out from under here,
Yeah.
and then put the new gasket on and, strong arm the new one, or the new old
The new old.
one back up there.
Cool.
And then start just putting nuts in place and slopping pieces together and whatnot. Oh, I got to remember to look to make sure that the pieces that hold the axle shafts, or that the axle shafts butt up against, came out with the rear end and aren't in here somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Because I had one time where somebody else changed one of these for me, and they had dropped one of those buttons down into here, and I was driving down the interstate on my way to that town where I had to abandon my car that time when the axle came apart, but in a Ram Charger.
More ties.
And apparently the speed on the interstate swirled the gear oil up enough that it was able to pull that metal up into the gears,
Oh, right.
and it went BAM! And it actually put a big hole in the back of the
Oh,
housing.
that is bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
I tripped up the gears in a Jeep in the back. Just ground them up. Ground them up. It was awesome. I had to drive home in four-wheel drive. And every once in a while, I'd suck one of those up and go, kapow! And jump.
So you know.
I do know. Yeah, it was awesome. It'd jump around and then kapow! It was very exciting. So, all right, cool. Well, let's get on to the next one then, huh?
Yep.
Sweet.
And cut.
And cut.